Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. My top 10 players for this USC program heading into the 2024 season. This was a list that took me extremely long to make, went back and forth with a ton of different players and, kind of left some players off that I really don't feel good about leaving off. Guys like Braylon Shelby, Anthony Lucas, Jacoby Lane, all three of those players and a couple other names that I think certainly could be top 10 players for this USC program heading into 2024. I could only choose 10. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, just want to say one, thank you to you guys, to the USC fans, whether we're talking the transfer portal, the recruiting trail, the amount of continued support you guys continue to show to the fellas. It truly does mean a lot. Y'all know I love talking this program. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, let me have it in the comment section. I don't feel great about this top 10 list. I left off a lot of good players. You got some players that I'm sleeping on. Let me know in the comment section. I continue to learn a ton from you guys. It's a blast talking ball with you guys, so let it fly in the comment section. And without further ado, let's get into these top 10 players. We'll start at number 10. I'm going to go linebacker Eric Gentry. Not only am I extremely excited about what Eric Gentry can be under this D'Anton Lynn defense in 2024, you go back to 2023, Eric Gentry should have been playing a heck of a lot more football than he was in 2023. We were banging the table for a guy like Eric Gentry going back to last season, 7th on the team in tackles, 4 tackles for a loss, 1 sack, the number that I kind of want to dig into. 5 passes defended. You talk about a linebacker where so many offenses want to attack the middle of the field. USC has this off-ball linebacker in Eric Gentry who certainly doesn't have the prototypical body type for that linebacker position, but you talk about teams trying to attack the middle of the field. Eric Gentry is a massive frame that can kind of sit back in zone coverage with those long arms, make it extremely hard for opposing quarterbacks to attack the middle of the field. 5 passes defended, kind of reflects how good he's been in coverage. And then you take a look at some in-depth numbers, a 7.5% missed tackle rate, also a guy that can get it going in the pass rush. You go back and watch Eric Gentry on the film, you just get the feeling that Alex Grinch did not know what he could do with Eric Gentry, didn't really know what to do with Eric Gentry. And you look at what D'Anton Lynn is going to be doing as defensive coordinator. Partially the reason I'm such a big fan of D'Anton Lynn is he knows how to use the personnel on his defense. Eric Gentry is a guy that can be phenomenal in zone coverage, has that range to go sideline to sideline. I could even see him coming off the edge as an edge rusher, using that athleticism and length as well. I think there are so many creative ways you can get Eric Gentry involved in this defense that you didn't really see him get to do in 2023. I think D'Anton Lynn going to give him a lot of opportunities to really impact this defense heading into the 2024 year. Number 9 on the list, Emanuel Pregnan, who I think you want to start with potentially the inconsistencies that you saw from Emanuel Pregnan, and it kind of makes sense, right? Making that jump from the group of 5 at Wyoming to USC. Yeah, there were some inconsistencies in his play, but you take a look at the film, the upside with Emanuel Pregnan is extremely high. There were some games where he looked like one of the better interior offensive linemen in the Pac-12. You take a look at some of the pass pro numbers, 584 pass pro opportunities, didn't allow a sack, only 13 quarterback hurries. Again, was a top 50 overall transfer portal prospect a cycle ago. I think if you're a USC fan, what excites you the most about a guy like Emanuel Pregnan is, what does he look like year 2 at the Power 5 level? Because again, you saw, I think a lot of those inconsistencies were making that jump from the group of 5 to the Power 5 level. You saw him play some really good football. If you're a USC fan, you just want to see him be a little bit more consistent. And if you get that, you're looking at a true Big Ten caliber offensive lineman in Emanuel Pregnan. Going to number 8, I'm going to go to the transfer from Mississippi State, Woody Marks, who, when you talk about Woody Marks, I think you have to talk about, one, the sheer production that he's had in the SEC. Take a look at those career numbers, over 1,800 rushing yards, over 1,200 receiving yards. And that's kind of the thing I want to circle. You look at Lincoln Riley, what makes him such a good offensive play caller, knows how to use his personnel. Woody Marks, not only a really good ball carrier between the tackles, being that traditional running back, think can really be an offensive weapon for USC. You get him one-on-one with the linebacker coming out of the backfield, he can be a real threat as a pass catcher at that running back position. I don't know if you guys have seen the pictures of what Woody Marks looks like after working out in the offseason. This dude looks like an absolute brick house. I am fired up for Woody Marks, not only because he's a really good player, but how Lincoln Riley is going to get him involved in this USC offense, going to number 7, quarterback Miller Moss. And again, you see Miller Moss get left out of a lot of the conversations of top quarterbacks coming back in college football. And I think it makes sense because you haven't seen a ton from Miller Moss, but I think the USC fans, we've certainly talked a lot about this cat. You will go back to the Louisville game and the bowl game. Looks like one of the better quarterbacks in the country, right? And you take a look at some of the in-depth numbers, not only an extremely impressive game against Louisville, in which was one of the better defenses in the ACC. Not many people talk about that in terms of Miller Moss balling out in the bowl game against a defense that was one of the best in their conference last year. He threw for over 370 yards, 6 touchdowns. Take a look at this number I was kind of looking at. 53% completion percentage when attacking 20-plus yards down the field. An extremely high number. And I feel like, the narrative around Miller Moss is, he's just kind of a jack. He's nothing really special. Miller Moss was a former top 100 recruit, was a coveted prospect coming out of high school. Miller Moss has the talent. He's been sitting behind one of the best quarterbacks we've seen play at the college football level. I don't think a lot of USC fans are going to be surprised when Miller Moss really asserts himself as one of the better quarterbacks that we see in the country. Going to number 6, Easton Mascarenas-Arnold, another transfer coming over from Oregon State. First team All Pac-12 guy last year at Oregon State. Over 100 tackles last year, 30 run stops. Easton Mascarenas-Arnold absolutely flies all over the field. This is a guy that you can tell has played a lot of football, has phenomenal feel for that position. When you get a linebacker that makes a lot of tackles, always seems to be around the football, and then just plays at an extremely high level with a very high motor, that's kind of what you're looking for. And I think what's special about Easton Mascarenas-Arnold is, you're hoping that he can elevate what Mason Cobb brings to USC as well. You look at Mason Cobb going back to 2022 at Oklahoma State, was one of the better linebackers in the Big 12, came to USC under Alex Grinch, massively underperformed in that 2023 year. Can Easton Mascarenas-Arnold come into this linebacker room and potentially kind of elevate the game of Mason Cobb as well? I'm fired up around Easton Mascarenas-Arnold. Was a captain for Oregon State last year. Not a lot to dislike about what he brings to the USC defense. Going to number 5, and a little bit of a projection, but I'm okay with it. Duce Robinson. You talk about this young wide receiver room for USC. Duce Robinson provides kind of that special dynamic for USC. And I think what I want to highlight is, 7-foot wingspan, 10-inch hands, phenomenal body control. You can tell his hand-eye coordination from his baseball background is certainly there. 21.9 yards per reception, one of the higher numbers that you'll see at the Power 5 level last year. You look at USC and what they have in Duce Robinson, a guy that can be, that matchup nightmare where you want to put a smaller cornerback that can run with Duce Robinson. He's going to just go up and make catches over those smaller defensive backs. You want to put a bigger body on him, he's going to run right by him. He's extremely smooth for his size. Not necessarily a ton of production as a true freshman with 351 yards is pretty damn good. I think Duce Robinson going to take a massive step in that 2024 year, going to number 4. Let's talk about another transfer in Kamari Ramsey from UCLA. When he committed to USC, I was fired up about this one because Dan Lynn knows how to use Kamari Ramsey. I think where you want to start is just extremely versatile. Kamari Ramsey's a guy that can hold up in man coverage. You take a look at the numbers, faced 40 targets, only gave up 25 catches, a 45% completion percentage when targeted. And kind of why I want to highlight that is, it's extremely hard to find safeties that can hold up in man coverage. Kamari Ramsey is one of those guys, but you can also ask him to do so many different things. Put him in the box. He only misses 8.2% of his tackles. Extremely good as a run defender, but also has a ton of range in the back end to kind of play that center field safety where he can cover a lot of ground, get his hands on a lot of footballs. kind of a defensive chess piece for this USC program. D'Anton Lynn knows how to use him. D'Anton Lynn wants to be extremely versatile. Kamari Ramsey going to play a massive role in this USC defense. Going into number 3, let's talk about Jonah. And Jonah, I absolutely love this kid. He's going to play center for USC in 2024. At least that's what we think right now. But when you have an offensive lineman that, one, has been as consistent as he's been over the last couple of years, playing tackle, playing guard, now playing center, he's going to play every position you could play possible on the offensive line. That is, almost unheard of. You see some guys with that tackle guard versatility, they kick in, they kick outside. You rarely see them come in and play center. That's what Jonah's going to do in 2024. He's played over 1,400 snaps, 536 pass pro opportunities at left tackle last year, only gave up 2 sacks, 13 quarterback hurries, grades out extremely well. This kid's a pro's pro, and I think he came back for one more year to show that he's an NFL caliber center. I have no question marks that Jonah's going to hold up at that center position. When you get an offensive lineman that is as good and as versatile as Jonah, that's when you have a really special guy. I think he anchors that offensive line. Going to number 2, that's Bear Alexander. Bear Alexander, how I want to talk about him is you look at the numbers, 48 tackles, which is 6th on the team. That kind of just tells you how active Bear Alexander was. Phenomenal athlete for that size, but only 6.5 TFLs, 1.5 sacks, 4 passes defended, which is extremely impressive. He gets his hands on a lot of balls at the line of scrimmage. Not necessarily the flashiest numbers from a box score standpoint, but then you start taking an in-depth look and say 24 run stops, that led the team, 23 quarterback hurries, that led the team. Bear Alexander was so disruptive for this USC defense, and although it didn't always show on the box score and the stat sheets, the USC fans know from watching Bear Alexander all last year, he was a difference maker on the defense. In my mind, the best player on USC's defense, coming in at number 2. And then number 1, let's go to Zachariah Branch. And how I want to talk about Zachariah Branch is, again, you look at the numbers, 31 catches for 320 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's not necessarily eye-popping, but when you talk about Zachariah Branch, he is one of the more electric players in college football. And going into year 2, I think what a lot of USC fans, at least myself included, is really excited about is to see him be more used as, that conventional wide receiver. A lot of times I feel like they pigeonholed Zachariah Branch into kind of that gadget role, right? Giving him screens, end around, some touches out of the backfield. I look at Zachariah Branch and say, there is so much more that you can do with him to get him involved in the offense. His average depth of target was only 6 yards down the field. He's one of the fastest players in all of college football. Use him working vertically. Use him in a little bit more of an enhanced route tree concepts. I think he can do all that stuff. I don't know why he wasn't necessarily asked to do that as a true freshman, but you see him kind of get utilized more in that traditional wide receiver role heading into the 2024 season. I think Zachariah Branch is in for a massive, we already saw him break out last year, but I think you're going to see the true impact that Zachariah Branch can have on the offensive side of football. Then you go to special teams and say he averaged 20 yards per punt return, an insane number. We know what he can do with the football in his hands on the special teams as well. He has changed games from the special team standpoint. He's going to continue to do that in 2024. And you're talking about one of the most electric players in all of college football. I don't think you could go with the number 1 player over a guy like Zachariah Branch. Again, I left a lot of guys that I love off, right? Jacoby Lamb and Kyle Lemon at the wide receiver spot. 2 guys that I just couldn't fit onto the top 10 list, but I think certainly could be top 10 players for USC. You go to the defensive side of the football, Anthony Lucas, Braylon Shelby, 2 guys that I'm extremely excited about as well. Would love to hear from you guys, some names that I maybe didn't mention that should have been mentioned. Let me know in the comments section. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, can't thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown the fellas, and we'll talk to y'all later.